So good evening, everybody, and welcome. So tonight we're going to have hopefully a very engaging, maybe a little bit of education, but for most people, an experience and opportunity to see some live pitches from ventures that are then going to be given some feedback and some questions from our esteemed, I was going to say judges, but I don't see you as judges because A, there's no prizes, and B, no one gets sentenced. So I'm going to call you panelists. At least I don't think there are any prizes. I don't think anyone gets sentenced tonight. But an esteemed group of panelists who are themselves advisors, investors, and themselves run businesses. So, and I'll introduce those in a moment. So I just wanted to say a couple of words myself, a little bit about pitching. And as a pitch coach myself, and as a storyteller, I think really that a pitch is very much like a story or a journey. And we only have this evening, we only have 3 minutes to hear from the businesses. So we have four ventures, we have 3 minutes. So how can they capture a little bit of that story of who they are, where they are with their idea, and where they want their idea to go? And I think that's really important to think of it as a little bit of a story. In one sense, I think it's quite easy to capture it as the idea of sharing your vision for what change you want to see, what problem you are going to solve, and how close you are to the reality of realizing that vision. In other words, how close are you to having customers for your business idea? I'm also interested, very much interested, in how the individual can share the idea of the values for their business. What values do their business stand on, and how they use those values to create value for the customer. So it's kind of an idea where we very much see the person in the idea as much as obviously the product, service, or technology. And finally, for those that I have met, and I'm sure there are plenty out there, they would be very disappointed if I didn't mention my ongoing kind of slogan is, how can your pitch be both credible and incredible? And the idea being that you have some credible evidence behind your idea, you can show us some credibility for yourself and for your team and for your idea, but ultimately you can show us why your idea is truly incredible, i.e. it's got something magic, it's got something amazing, and it will do something that no one else can do. Or certainly you're going to challenge the world in terms of something that no one else can do. So those are kind of 3 things that I'm certainly looking for tonight. I'm very much interested in the style and impact of the pitches. I'll be asking some questions myself to the ventures, but our experts in the house today, and they are true experts, are Darrin, Jamie, John, and Ting. So I'm going to ask each of them just to introduce themselves and say a little about them. So I'm going to start with Darrin. Now, Darrin, I understand you are fairly exotically located this evening out in Costa Rica, I believe. Darrin, if you could just tell us a little bit about the sorts of areas that I know you're an investor and you have various other roles, a little bit about yourself, the sorts of areas you're interested in, and what you're looking for in tonight's pitches.
Yeah, so 30 years in Cambridge as of this year in biotech since I started my PhD, just by the Judge Business School, actually, the Institute of Biotechnology, which was located there. As a scientist, entrepreneur, and investor. So over that period, I've started, grown, or invested in over 40 life science or tech companies. I'd say around 70% have been life science, 30% tech. I'm really passionate about getting involved in early stage ventures. And pitching is one of the key things, I think, of the skills that I've learned in over 4,000 pitches. I think that is the skill set that I think I take with me most. If you're able to convince people of an idea, a concept, a product, a service, a vision, and get them just to want to engage with you on your passion, excitement, and your plans to be able to address that. So you could be changing the way someone transacts with a market, how someone might experience a market, or you may be even really big picture looking at how, from a macro perspective, the market even functions around there. You know, entrepreneurs come up with ideas that can fit into any of those sort of molds. So I look for that, someone to have, as you said, a vision, a passion of something they want to disrupt and change. And then the purpose of this first pitch is really to start a conversation. And it needs to be, I'd encourage the pitchers to start to think of it as a conversation. It's not to beat us over the head with facts and data. You're not going to get a decision today. No one's going to cut a check in the room today. It's just to explain What is it? Why is it important? Why is it better than what's gone before? How you plan to exploit it? How's it going to change the customer's world? And then by proxy, how are we going to do well as investors out of it? And if at the end of it, we are asking engaged questions, which are aimed at clarification, etc., then you've achieved the purpose. We will want to speak to you again. You just give us all the information and we have the information we need to say yes or no, then you failed in your
absolutely
pitch.
We talked about this the other day, Darrin, and I think I equated it to how can you get a second date. Exactly. And don't lie on the first date, by the way, guys, because you will get found out eventually. Darrin, thank you ever so much. We'll come to you for some questions as we go along. And this evening, ladies and gentlemen, you will have an opportunity to ask questions yourself. You will be offered up the opportunity to join in via the chat Q&A, and we'll be selecting questions to ask either of the panelists or of the ventures themselves as we go along. So I'm going to introduce now Ting, if I can ask you to introduce yourself. Now, you have a very interesting background, coming slightly different from the investor background, I believe. So if you'd like to tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're interested in and what you're looking for from this evening.
Sure, thank you, Paul. First, thank you to CGBS for having me on this panel today. And I'm really happy to be making some contribution to my own business school, which I have enjoyed my business learning from my MBA some 25 years ago, and which I also continuously enjoy being involved in various forms like this event. I feel truly humbled in the company of the other three panel judges or panelists who have had such a long list of achievements with their own ventures. So my own background is in international business and investment facilitation, which goes two-way between the West and the East. I have worked with many large tech multinationals such as BT, Symbian, CSR, Abcam, many of those you're probably familiar with Cambridge names, but also many VC-backed startup and ventures, and help them take advantage of what China had to offer during the last 2 decades of its rapid economic development. And sometimes also help them raise funds from Chinese investors and advise them how to make the best relationship works with that. I myself, I've made 5 small investments in startups, 2 of which are based in China, 1 in AI for translation tech, another one in food and drinks, and the other 3 are in Cambridge in life science and fintech. So as Paul mentioned, I mainly act now more as a mentor and advisor for entrepreneurs, as well as scale-ups on doing business in the Far East. Particularly via my company, Crayfish, which started as a freelancing marketplace for English Chinese bilingual professionals less than 5 years ago, and now evolved to a full business service platform for SMEs to do business in international market with a focus on China and Southeast Asia. Crayfish.io, the full name actually, is also a Cambridge Angel portfolio company, thanks to the support of 2 of Cambridge Angels, Jonathan Milner and David Cleveley, both who had also their portfolio companies that I worked with to help them get into the Asian market. So the companies I work with, all my own experience, are very much more in engineering, ICT, healthcare, educational institutions, and edutech. I can see that this evening, mainly the companies are in healthcare and biotech area. I probably won't be able to contribute a lot on the tech front, but I very much would look out for your business model and what you have in terms of your ambition for the overseas market. And at the end of the evening, I hope I can remember very well how you're going to do that. And I would like to offer you my support and advice if you need to do that. Thank you.
Right. Well, I'm sure, Ting, that the other investors would agree that we're obviously very much interested in the products themselves, the technology, but we're very much interested in the people. and the people side, how they present themselves, how they show their story. So absolutely, we'll be looking out for that as well. And I think you also showed us a very good trick this evening. You thanked your own angel investors, and if nothing else, if you thank your investors and you can name them, you'll certainly do something very going in the right direction. It's showing that you already have some credibility, you've already got some investors, and you've definitely got some traction, and you're making them smile. So you're doing a great job. Thank you ever so much, Ting. I'm going to come across to Jamie now. And Jamie, just ask you the same thing. If you'd like to introduce yourself, say a little bit about your background, what you're interested in, and what you're also looking out for this evening.
So, my background, I started off as a chip designer, a research scientist, designing all sorts of types of chips, different substances. Took a chip into production and realized that there's a huge gap between the science and actually making things that can be manufactured and then meet the customer requirements. I then came to Cambridge, joined Acorn Computers, and it was a completely different world. Everything was much more urgent and vibrant, but as we all know, the mistakes were made, there were problems, the market changes, which is inevitable, and had the opportunity to co-form ARM. There I switched from being an engineering manager and joined the dark side, and did something that I probably swore at some younger age I'd never ever do. I turned to sales and I actually built up the ARM sales organization around the world. And I've been in the very position, well, not quite the same position as you guys, but I've been in the position where I've been told, literally, you've got 5 minutes, convince me why I should spend any more time with you, by senior people. I'm pleased to say that most of them did, and then they carried on listening. But there's a whole bunch of skills that you get from the sales side of things that I think sometimes are missing when you've come up from the science side. We went public. I won't dwell on what followed, but I then retired 2002, did some angel investing, got talked into working again and became a part-time venture capitalist, but I've kind of come full circle. I'm now literally playing with electronics again. I do quite a lot of mentoring on both formal and informal. Despite the fact that I said I was never going to invest again, I have done a bit more angel investing. We shall see how that goes. What am I looking for? Well, I'm looking for investments, and this is a difficult one for you to answer, but I'm looking for investments that interest me and where I can bring value. Because, you might not believe it, but money is available in lots of places. Don't get dumb money. You want money from people can help. And, Ting was referring to some of the Cambridge Angels. They're not just sources of money. They are sources of wisdom, advice, help, shoulder to cry on if you need it. Now, I'm not a Cambridge Angel, so I'm bigging them up for their own sake, but yeah.
Yeah, so that's something actually very interesting. We always get the impression that one was not take any money you can get hold of, but when you're very early stage, you're looking for some kind of seed investment. You think, well, any money anyone offers is probably going to be good money, but actually one does have to think you actually are the person that is has a certain amount of power over the decision of who you to actually take money from and why you choose to go with that angel or that venture capital company.
Do your due diligence. They do it on you, you should do it on them.
Absolutely. That's very, very, very interesting and something that we may come across the rest of the evening. Thank you ever so much, Jamie. And last but not least, John, we've got you up. It looks like we got you up in the attic this evening, John.
Disappointed. I'd love to be with Darrin in Costa Rica, but
I thought, yeah, well, there you go. One day I'm sure. Darrin may well love to be up in the attic there, John. You just don't know. It's
a lot of fun.
Anyway, if you'd like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, what kind of things you're interested in, and also what you're looking for this evening.
Yeah, perfect. So I studied back in Cambridge now a while ago. Did natural sciences and physics, and then thought I'd go off and have a career in the civil service. And then in my first job there, ended up seeing someone typing on a BlackBerry kind of like this, if people can even remember what BlackBerries are nowadays. But this was back in 2008, and that gave me the idea for my first startup, SwiftKey, which was essentially trying to improve typing on smartphones. it feels kind of a different era now because it's just taken for granted that that's what we do. But back in 2008, really, apps didn't really exist, Twitter didn't really exist. A lot of these things were just emerging for the first time. So I was really fortunate to have a fantastic co-founder, Ben Medlock, who really led on the tech side. And then together, we started working with big phone companies around the world like Samsung, Xiaomi, Huawei, BlackBerry, etc. We also had an app on Android and iOS as well. So I think I was actually reflecting when Jamie was speaking, reflecting about sales was, I'm not sure back then there was a lot of pitching we did. I think it's probably formalized a lot in more recent years. There was a lot of that sense that you needed to convey what you're doing to your partners, big companies, senior people that didn't have much time. So I do think these skills of communication, how do you get across what you're doing concisely, clearly, matter in so many aspects, recruitment, when you're hiring people, when you're trying to inspire the team as a leader in pitching. And so, yeah, we ended up being really fortunate. We were able to partner with Microsoft and they acquired us in 2016. So I worked with Microsoft for a few years then. I've moved back to Cambridge now, so full circle. I have done some angel investments. And I think it's been a really interesting experience for me to kind of see the other side of that. I haven't tended to kind of go out there proactively, but I've been very fortunate to have some really interesting companies come to me. Typically, I've tried to invest alongside kind of a fund or a top seed fund because I felt that was a very good filter for quality. And then from my perspective, I felt that I could be an independent broker. I felt that the VCs, for a lot of the journey, I believe the VCs were my best friend. They've also got their own agendas. And I think it's important to be able to navigate through that. That relationship is a very positive one done well, but it can be tricky if it goes wrong. So actually having angels alongside the founder who can kind of who's got a little bit maybe more experience in the early stages and can be kind of that independent broker, I think is really valuable. And I saw it in our own business where we had some great VCs, we also had some great angels. Yeah. And I really benefited from having that mixture of different individuals. Like Jamie was saying, it's not just the money, it's also the people that you really want to run your business.
Absolutely.
And just for tonight, I mean, 3 minutes is a really short time. I think the main thing for me is what you guys have said already, really. It's about that chance to convey what you're about really clearly, and make it exciting, make it interesting, make the follow-up conversation that you want to kind of have that conversation, you want to go deeper, you want to find out more. I think that's the best that you can achieve. I think I have had some experiences where I've seen some fantastic pitches and afterwards just going after for a quick chat after the session and people haven't been able to answer the basic questions. I think the key thing here is that the pitch isn't a facade, it's just the introduction. And actually, if anyone's going to invest, they're going to spend time getting to know you, they're going to build their relationship up, they're going to want to go deeper and to understand. So anticipate the obvious questions that people are going to ask, make sure you actually know the obvious answers. That'd be the only other bit I'd add to what's already been shared.
Good, but absolutely. But of course, we do need to get our foot in the door. We do need to get to the point where they're interested. We need to present the gift. And then hopefully when that beautiful gift is unwrapped, there's going to be something super, super valuable inside. So let's see what gifts we have this evening. As I said, to everybody watching this evening and listening, feel free to ask questions either to the panelists or to the who can go towards the ventures, and they'll be collected through the Q&A and you'll be able to interact together, and the team will help you make sure that you're guided to where you can do that. And to the panelists, I may not ask all of you to ask questions all of the time. If you have a particular interest in one of the businesses, please let it be known. Otherwise, we'll come to 2 or 3 of you, ask a question as you would, having listened to the pitch, and then maybe an opportunity to also give a little bit of feedback as well. All right, so on that note, unless we have any other questions, I think we're going to get started, and I'm going to invite the first venture to join us. So the first venture that's going to be pitched is going to be pitched by Andrea Greve. So Andrea Greve, you're going to be joining us. So you're there, Andrea?
Yes, I am.
She is. Andrea, good evening. And you're going to be pitching Cain Medical this evening. Yes. Andrea, before you get started, just very quickly tell us, have you pitched this business before? Have you received any funding or investment for your business?
So we've not really received any investment, but we are part of Cambridge Accelerate. So in a sort of like safe sort of training space, we have pitched, but we haven't really received any funding.
So you're part of a program, you've been part of a program, but you haven't actually received any funding. Okay, great, that's fantastic. That's all I think, just to make sure we're in context. The rest of the story is down to you. So you've got 3 minutes, Andrea, to pitch your venture, and then we're gonna have 7 minutes of questions and feedback for you. The stage is yours.
Great. So I'm Andrea Greve. I'm a director and co-founder of Cain Medical. Advancement in modern medicine are incredible. However, modern technology is advancing a lot faster than hospitals can keep up with. And in an age of automation and AI, it is really heartbreaking to see that medical staff are still using manual checking and recording in order to input patient data into electronic records. This is a process that's labor intensive and prone to error, and also leads to compromised data and inadequate decision-making. And this lack of current connectivity between medical devices and systems leads to loss of over 50,000 lives per year and costs about 30 billion in the US alone. But what if? What if all patients could be safely monitored simultaneously? What if collecting patients' data was automated? How many lives could we save? These are the questions that we ask ourselves, and we came up with a solution called CM Sense. CM Sense is the healthcare's bridge into the future. Using cutting-edge innovation, CM Sense automatically connects patient data with electronic records. However, CM Sense is more than just a bridge, because it also forces data to adhere to certain rules and standards, so that data from different devices have the same metric and units and can be integrated with each other. We connect to all sorts of medical devices and systems, and our most recent part of product actually allows to connect beyond hospital walls and link into the community. So recently, the Track and Trace initiative during COVID has accelerated the requirement of connectivity, and we are part of the solution. So over the last year, we have connected to several hospitals within the UK and the US, and we have generated £340,000 revenue, out of which £185,000 are recurrent revenue. But we think that there is great potential to connect to more devices in the hospitals we already represented in. Just to give an idea, just in the Cambridge University Trust, there are about 14,000 medical devices. But we also think there's a great opportunity to expand into other hospitals in which we are not yet represented in. But more importantly, the pandemic has really fundamentally changed how we approach healthcare in the future. Vulnerable people are best cared for in the community, which minimizes their risk of infection when going to hospital, but also alleviates hospitals of the pressures they're currently facing. So our latest product has been developed for the Hospital at Home initiative, which connects devices outside of hospitals into hospital systems. So we're currently piloting this scheme in several NHS trusts. So typically paramedics or district nurses collect medical devices, and then they have to go into hospital to upload these data. It would save them about 25% of their journey time if they were able to upload this remotely. And this is what we're enabling to do. So really, we're in the long-term plan of the NHS, which allows us to increase capacity and clinical productivity. And for that, the government has just set aside 2.1 billion in order to fund the digital NHS. So we're now in the process of raising some funding. So we're looking for 3 million that will allow us to really accelerate and get into market. And we're looking for funders and advisors to help us scale. So please join us on the journey and connect with us.
Good. Thank you, Andrea. It's good within time, and thank you very much. Let's leave your slides up there because we might, some of the panelists might like to refer back to them. But let's jump in there. Who would like to ask the first question?
I'm happy to, but I'm happy to defer to
Darrin,
others.
yeah, go ahead. Please, Darrin, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I've invested in a couple of these, the next generation of making sort of medical sort of more efficient, whether it be its deployment of doctors, locums, various things like this, because there's huge savings that can be made in terms of increasing capacity, productivity, etc. The technologies that are required to do that, required how you handle this multi-dimensional data, right? When you prove something on a small scale, ultimately, if you're going to go NHS wide and link systems around the world, you're going to need extreme scale. You're going to be measuring multi-parameters. You may even have location in there, various things like this. So can you talk a bit about scalability? You've clearly got some traction in what I call a module. So you've proven it in a sort of a module example, how you would scale this technically.
Yeah, so really what we do is we really have a software solution. So it's really a library of device drivers. And the scalability really lies into connecting more devices that are out in the market. And I think the uniqueness and the advantage that comes with it is the standardization we enforce when we actually connect these different devices. So I think we're not only connecting them into systems, but we are also connecting them in a way that they are standardized, so that the metrics and units are there, so that they that it doesn't matter from what device you collect data, they automatically can be integrated. So the scalability is to
so your customer, the data handling has to be handled by your customers. So
correct.
Your bottleneck could potentially be, depending on how complex this data gets, what scale it gets, on the limitations of current solutions for database technology.
Yeah, so I think we offer different solutions. They're often hospital information systems that collect these data, but in the future, so that's the distant future, so not right now, but really where we see ourselves going is we are enforcing the standardization, because we really think that there's really great advances to be made to actually then mine these data, to actually connect these data, not just for the collection's sake, but also looking at these multimodal devices and then having some data mining algorithms that would actually allow us to see patterns, to have better clinical decision makings, to see trends, and to come up with predictions in terms of prognosis or likely outcomes.
Thank you very much. Nice presentation.
Good, thank you very much. I'm going to come back to you, Darrin, a little bit of feedback on how well these questions are answered and whether you feel satisfied by the answers, which is always very, very interesting. Jamie, John, or Ting, who would like to ask the next question?
Well, I'll ask if that's okay. Yeah, no, I like the presentation. I like good, clear slides, and I like to feel that you told me bits and pieces I need to know. I mean, I'd love to see this work. For a variety of reasons, when you get older, you have more engagement with hospitals, and I have, well, my wife personally witnessed her consultant losing it because she couldn't bring up her scan in order to check it at a consultation. And the nurse had to apologize. So really, I guess, what do you think is the biggest problem that you're going to have to overcome? Is it a cultural one? Is it money? And how do you aim to take those steps that will build your momentum?
Yeah, so I think in the past, the biggest problem was really the awareness that that technical solutions are needed. So technology actually was probably available. It's not that sophisticated or groundbreaking. But I think it got really accelerated partially through the pandemic, because now we're really seeing that there's like a huge need to care for a lot of people. And I think there's now the political will to actually invest in that. And I think there's awareness to this. I think the other thing is also that there's really a rising prevalence in chronic disorder, but at the same time also increased awareness in the general population that, for example, early diagnosis and testing will allow better treatment. So I think that actually increases the need to have more testing done. I think the biggest hurdle in the past was really the awareness to provide the services and pay the money for that, basically.
But is there a willingness? A specific example, my mother-in-law came out of hospital. Someone said that she was on antibiotics. It didn't appear in her the notes that you get when you exit. Her GP didn't even get the notes for some period of time. And these, these are basic problems, but they still seem to be existing.
So there's a huge political will right now. So there's something which is called Hospital at Home. It's a whole initiative. The government tries really hard to push a lot of people out of hospital into the community. There are initiatives to create digital community hubs that actually do diagnostics. They're called community diagnostic hubs. There are 40 that have already been established. 100 will be established. So I think really the need to go into hospital is something that is now placed in the community. And I think there's huge political will now to actually do this. So I think Rishi Sunak just pledged a couple of months ago, 6.5 billion to actually have this transition. So I think we really think this is the right time and the right place. And I think we're very well positioned because some of the products we had already developed and we are just waiting to actually come into the market, which is partially why we started with the US market, because it was easier to get in. But now actually there's a huge transformation. And also to be said, I think the lack of staff really kind of enforces more technical solution to allow clinical staff to just do the clinical duties and not really do any input of data that isn't really the best use of the time.
Okay, good. Well, Andrea, you're showing a very good knowledge of not only of your business, but of the world in which your business or your venture is existing, which is very impressive. We've got time for one more question. So who would like to ask a question this time round, Ting or John?
Okay, I'll ask question if
John, you hold on to yours for the next one.
Okay. I saw that, Andrea, first, congratulations. I also agree with Jamie. Your presentation is very clear and easy to digest as well. I saw that Li Peng, who's on your 3 people core team, I happen to know him as well, and so I thought you probably already have your mindset about doing business in overseas market. And I haven't sold anything to NHS, but I understand that selling to the NHS in a hospital trust is a lengthy process, and just in your cash flow forecast, whether you have allowed to that, because I was looking at your figures, 50 hospitals roughly, about 340, so that's like a few £1,000 per hospital you have done. I guess that's like a trial or something like that. But just wonder, is the UK market actually the quick success, or in this case, would a market like China, where you can actually sell into individually hospital, would that be considered a quick win as well? Are you pursuing UK first and overseas, or together as your resources allows?
No, absolutely. I think you're raising a really good point. So I think our strategy is to really kind of like go international. I mean, we are already international because we're already in the US market, but I think we don't really see ourselves to focus on the UK, but actually to kind of use that solution sort of in other countries where we can actually place our product. And just a side comment onto what you said about our current presence. I mean, our current presence in the 50 hospitals is just the first. We only have a couple of connections in these hospitals, but obviously these hospitals have a huge amount of devices. So I think the procurement process and going through the paperwork is what we find out currently is also a little bit time consuming, just because the clinical staff are so overworked. I think getting meetings with them is quite lengthy. So we are absolutely committed to go international and like follow up what we can do. And that's partially also why we're trying to raise money, because obviously we need manpower, and we need kind of like, that kind of like support to actually be able to take that on.
Okay, thank you very much, Andrea. John, we don't have time, I'm afraid, for question, but would you just like to give a very quick reaction to the pitch without asking a question, if that's fair?
Well, I think the test was, do I want to have more conversation? Yeah, I'd love to explore kind of, how do you get the traction already? What's the next stage? Is kind of get into the details of it. Because I think, like, obviously, as we've all identified, it's a big problem, very clear presentation. And I think it's that question about the execution. How do you actually take it from where it is today to kind of 10x that and keep scaling it?
That's where
and what are the challenges to do that?
Good. All right. So those will be the next questions.
Definitely pass the test. Definitely pass the test.
Definitely pass the test, Andrea. You've passed the test. I think I can hear the checkbooks opening. Do we still have checkbooks these days? If we do, I can hear them rustling. All the way from Costa Rica, even. John, you'll be first up on the next question. Thank you very much, Andrea, for your pitch, and we'll be coming back to you later. I've got a couple of questions about data, what you're doing with the data, who owns the data, etc., etc. They're going to come to you from the audience. So, audience, keep asking the questions. Thank you ever so much, Andrea, and thank you, panel. Great, thank you. So, the next person is Elena. Elena's going to join us, if you can, please. Hi, Elena. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm
Very
good. Thank you.
Yeah, how was it watching Andrea's pitch? You did a good job?
Yeah, very good job. Yeah.
It's nice to watch someone else and see what you can do. Tell us just a little bit, what stage are you at, Andrea? Have you raised any finance yet? Have you got any support?
We've raised initial investment, and that has helped us develop the science behind it. And now we're currently in a pre-seed investment round of 150,000, and that will help us with the prototyping and with the beta testing.
Great, good. Just nice to know where you are. Good. Well, tell us a bit more about your idea and where you want to take it.
Perfect. I will just share. Right. Hi, I'm Elena. I've also brought in Matt. He'll be joining me for the Q&A. We're the co-founders of PageX Lab, and we are currently developing a novel way of analyzing behavior and cognition in various commercial settings, from recruitment, training, to marketing and education. This concept started around 2 years ago while at a university, when we used a now competitive technology to test people's reactions to marketing materials, and also during their product development phase. And we discovered many limitations that made this form of analysis really unsuitable commercially. From a lengthy setup time of at least 30 minutes per participant to really low comfort levels and scientific expertise that was needed to set it up and also analyze the data, we are bringing out an automatic and non-contact headset that is comfortable, It reduces the setup time to 0, and also it is paired with an analytics software and predictive matrix that is user-friendly, but also maintains the data accuracy. The configuration of the headset and the sensor advancements really allow for an automatic placement and analysis from a short distance. This way, the setup time is reduced to 0, comfort is maximized, also allows the user to perform any task in a comfortable manner, which is not only more efficient, but also improves the fidelity of the data gathered. This data will then be fed into our custom analytics software that provides both the data handling and the understanding as well. The analytics software not only reads the brainwave activity given by the headset, but it automatically scores the activity depending on the behavior shown by the tester. The machine learning that it's included is able to increase the accuracy of the readings over time. And our prediction matrix also makes really useful predictions of the user's brainwave data in real time. The results are instant, and they're also provided in a digestible manner that requires absolutely no specialist input. With 2 patents currently being filed, and we've just completed an Innovate UK project in the creative industries, our traction has led us to currently raising our pre-seed round of £150,000, which will then allow us to start the headset prototype, the beta testing in our core markets for the system, with big corporate connections already solidified in our areas, and also expanding our core team from 2 to 4. We'll also be undertaking our seed round in the next 6 months, and that will take our technology to TRL 9 and full commercialization of the HX system. And overall, our growing team of scientists like myself and the co-founder, software engineers, as well as scientific and market advisors, and the partnership that we currently have with the Manufacturing Technology Center really allows HX Lab to introduce such an exceptional scientific principle into the commercial world. And thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to answering your questions.
All right, thank you very much, Elena. I think you did well going down the credible and the incredible route there. Certainly lots of credible partners and people that you've started working with. So that's very, very interesting. Good. So if you can unshare your screen for a second, and we'll just have you. I think that actually worked quite nicely. Perfect. We can see a full-size you. I know you've got Matt has joined you. Hi, Matt. I love it. You just come in. It's like a sitcom. You just come in and join. So if you didn't think I had a team, in fact, I do have a team. And the first person that's going to quiz you a little bit about your idea is going to be John.
No, thank you very much. I guess this area sounds fascinating to me, but I think I know absolutely nothing really about this kind of sector. So can you just kind of help land it a little bit for me? Like what's the purpose of, so as I understand it's a headset you're going to put on people and you can analyze brainwaves to help create analytics. I guess the bit I didn't quite understand was, why do you want to do that? What's the purpose? What's it for?
There's lots of potential reasons for companies to do this in a lot of different sectors. The best one and the most common one is to measure people's reactions to things. So essentially, if you want to see how people will react to your marketing material or your product, then you get a really accurate assessment of how people feel while they're viewing it. Another one we're developing at the moment is testing how well people are uptaking training and how well they're being trained and how efficient they are at a new task. We've had some great conversations with people in the L&D sector, such as Carrie Foster. She's written a few books in the L&D sector, and the potential uptake for this for training and for training assessments is really high as well. So one of our main problems was really narrowing down what to do with it, but there was our favorite areas at the moment.
And at the same time, education as well. So everyone has a very different way of learning, and creating personalized systems from children to university and adults. You can really pinpoint exactly how to create an education system based on different how people uptake different learning materials, and that's, you get some really interesting data. And coming back to things like marketing, you can actually replace things like focus groups and surveys. We've seen that they're not very accurate and people tend to lie. and you can't like this. So you get real life data, you get really accurate predictions, and you can actually test by the millisecond when the reaction changed and why it did. So you can actually get some really good data out of it.
Yeah, I'm going to come to you in a second, Darrin. So I see you've got your hand up.
Yeah, no worries.
Jump in. John, did you have something just to follow up on that?
Yeah, I think it was just maybe the two quick bits of advice would just be, I think, obviously you guys are really deep in it and you have such a depth of knowledge, but kind of coming out with some really tangible examples at the beginning, just someone that knows nothing would be really powerful for me personally. And then the other just quick bit of advice would be, I think you're right in the early stages to try and explore and be creative about what it could be. But I think that challenge you got now is, how do you find that kind of first killer application? Where do you get started? How do you kind of get some traction? It may well be in the future you do all these mockers, but actually somehow turning it from an idea into kind of, you've actually got partners using it in one of these areas will be key.
Good, thank you ever so much, John. Over to you, Darrin.
Yeah, mine will be very quick because John just brought that out. You know, you didn't illustrate for me a killer application. You're clearly very excited about the technology, really knowledgeable about it. Your pitch was very much on the science push, which I don't personally have a problem with, but a lot of investors might be better if you started with the killer application at the end, whether it's starting with the example of A/B testing, like everyone has a reference point then, what that is, and then what if we could do this, A, B, C, right? And you then come in with your science push behind it and then open up the Pandora's box of applications that you could do at the end. I think that's what was missing in the pitch for me, just a bit of advice.
Okay, good. It's a little bit like, sometimes I describe it as the hook and the hit. You hook us into the world, but then hit us with what you guys absolutely are going to be doing. You know, get us right in there as quick as you can. And for those that, you know, for some of us who are less science kind of oriented, is making sure it comes to life with examples of not only what is it, but what is it like? How can we relate to it?
There was one follow-up. There was one follow-up, and sorry, Jamie said, but one follow-up. Right, it's a physical unit you have to put on. So I like the idea of being able to test people's real opinions in opinion polls, right? Which I think are heavily biased by all sorts of different things around there. But you're going to have willing participants who are willing to subject themselves to this. Now that'd be easier in a product environment where they may have an incentive, for example, to get a cheaper product, discount, whatever, all that kind of stuff. But it might be more difficult where it's challenging people's view. In fact, you've got a lie detector there in some form, right, around there. So that may be something you have to think about in terms of the barriers to the consumer uptake. Good.
Well, you've certainly inspired lots of questions, guys. So that's a good thing. That's a good thing. And now Jamie's gonna carry on. Thank you, Jamie.
Yeah, you definitely did the incredible, and it leads to a whole load of questions. But I'll just say one piece of advice I'd give is try and have something touchy-feely. Whenever you are in front of a customer or talking about something, if you can show something that makes it concrete, makes it real, because I'm sitting here being sort of distracted by thinking, wow on earth, what did it look like? You know, how remote is it? So even if it's a mock-up, I mean, I prefer real things, but if it's a mock-up, then having something like that, and it speaks to Darrin's point, it helps to just make these things real.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I definitely see your point, but unfortunately, where it's still in the patenting stages, we had some beautiful 3D renders that we could have shown, and we are actually starting the prototype in April. So yeah, we would have loved to show you all of those pictures and the renders that we have, but because we're in a patenting stage, we can't really show them. But
I think the key there is to make it relatable, Elena, and make it something we can relate to. Sorry, Jamie.
I was going to say, then what I do is I'd have said that, I mean, when you're talking about patenting stages, I'd have said, you know, we'd love to show you this, but, and then it becomes a hook. It's sort of, people think, oh, great, there is something I could see. I must have conversations with you afterwards, etc.
Great.
You can abstract it into cartoon though, right? You know, the principle is to embed it in people's real lives, right? So they understand. They may have been in that situation, A/B testing or whatever, and that's the purpose of it, not to show your designs, not to show, and then as you say, you can throw out the hook that we've got patents being filed, and you know, otherwise we'd like to show you the real thing. Then you kind of get best of both worlds there.
Great, good. Ting, did you have anything you would like to ask or to feedback on?
Just to quickly say, I actually totally agree with the other panelists. Particularly, I was also thinking, would people mind, to have this for you to know what they really think about watching advertisement, things like that. But incentives works, I guess. It just reminded me of one of the clients, a company I work with, that they have a SaaS software, but to measure the mental health brain changes during the mental health problem for kids. So they are able to measure over a period of time, compare the changes. And so I was just thinking, if you talk about education, I think about mental health, that could be one of the applications. And also to just about on, I think Darrin mentioned maybe or Jamie mentioned the cartoon. I think this particular company I worked with, they have really good infographics, cartoon to show the hippopotamus in the brain and how it works. And it just captures, because otherwise it's very abstract what they do.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah. Okay. Just, I mean, now listen, guys, I appreciate you've been given a lot of opinions there, and you're just thinking, we only had 3 minutes to tell our story, and you've beaten us up. But just in the last 30 seconds, what have you taken from that feedback or questions that you think is useful feedback for yourselves?
Yeah, definitely relating it more to the customer. That definitely is, it was a barrier that we had before. We are very scientific people, and approaching it and relating it to the customer is definitely something that will be taken on board more.
Yeah. On that note as well, we've had conversations with real companies. We've spoken to Sky and Etihad, their research and development departments, in terms of the L&D sector of moving this forward. And yeah, I completely agree that we could have. I was hoping to, we'd have time to mention that as well.
Oh, you did. You did have time to mention it. So you sorry, Darrin, did you have something to add?
No, they got it out now.
You got it in there. You got it in there. You'll be careful, but you got it in there. Good. Well, we're going to come back to. We got a few questions for you from the audience as well. So we're going to come back to you guys. Thank you ever so much, and we'll see you guys later. Well done. Good work. Okay. Our third pitch is going to be from Keith. And Keith is going to be pitching his venture, Medwise rather. And Keith, hi, how are you doing?
Hi, Paul. Hi, everyone.
Good, fantastic. Oh, you're sitting in front of the Judge Business School this evening, I see.
Yes, indeed.
Fantastic. All right, very good. Hope it's not too cold. Keith, where are you, just in terms of any investment or that you've had so far?
Yeah, so we have raised a pre-seed round, and we're looking to raise our next round.
So you've raised a pre-seed. Okay, good. All right, fantastic. Keith, you've got 3 minutes to tell us a little bit about what you guys are up to and where you're trying to take it.
Perfect. So, hi everyone. I'm Keith, CEO and co-founder of Medwise.ai. And Medwise.ai is the Google for medical professionals and healthcare organizations. Our mission is to empower every healthcare professional to do their best work and to provide better care for their patients. Healthcare systems are losing billions every year. In the UK, the NHS is losing 5 billion per year due to the lack of adoption of best practice care. And in the US, this number is around 105 billion per year. A big driver of this problem is because clinicians, healthcare professionals are not getting the right information at the right time. 70% of doctors use Google at least once a day to find information, but 50% of the time clinical questions are still abandoned and unanswered. Additionally, with the pandemic, teleconsultations have grown 38 times, and this is exacerbating the problem. Imagine if you're an online doctor based in London, but seeing patients all across the country. How will you know what is the local best practices? So our AI search platform solves this problem. We aggregate siloed information sources and provide instant answers to clinicians. Our solutions have been shown to save up to 2.6 minutes per search in a 10 minutes consultation. We have projects with an integrated care system in the UK covering 96 GP practices. We've recently won an Innovate UK Smart Grant to expand into secondary care with a hospital in Wales. And we've also recently signed a pilot with one of the biggest telemedicine provider in the UK. And I'm super excited about that. Doctors love our product, and here are some testimonials showing how they like the speed of our product and the benefit of having one place to search all useful resources. We customize and sell our solution to healthcare telemedicine providers with a SaaS subscription model. And we win the competition by providing a great search that is customizable to our clients' needs and integrating with local content. So I'm a medical doctor by background, and I graduated from the MPhil Bioscience Enterprise Program from Cambridge. I've also closed 1.5 million deals at Huma, a digital health unicorn in the UK. My co-founder, Louise, was previously funded by CCAM, an entrepreneur first, built and sold Bloomsbury AI to Facebook. But there is one more thing, and that is our platform is capturing a new category of real-world data, showing clinician behavior and information needs in real time. This can revolutionize how pharmaceutical companies market to healthcare professionals. Doximity, which is the LinkedIn for doctors, IPO'd for 10 billion, and we aim to become the Google for doctors, disrupting this 7.3 billion pharma marketing industry. So we're raising 1.3 million in equity to grow sales in the UK, with 40% already committed. And please reach out if you're interested, and looking forward to the questions.
All right, thank you very much, Keith. On time. And if you can unshare for a moment, we'll see the full version of you. Thank you very much, Keith. Right, which one of our panelists would like to ask the first question?
I'm happy to go.
Please, Darrin.
I mean, Keith, did we overlap? I did spend 10 years doing a lot with the MPhil Bioscience Enterprise. Did we overlap? I can't remember. Remember.
I'm sure we've met in some events, yes.
So I really like this space, and I really like what you're doing. So my question, I thought your presentation was very clear. For someone like me, it was very compelling in terms of the opportunity. You've positioned it as an augmentation of clinical decision making, which I think is really important, right? Because you're not displacing the GP. But my question is, do you have a vision in the future? Well, I've always had a view, and forgive me, that a standard MD is kind of an empathic machine for making incorrect decisions or suboptimal decision making because of the limits of their human brain. Do you have a vision where this could replace certain GP activities as a general diagnostic?
Yeah.
Or is it purely to augment? Is this your beachhead into something much bigger with the next generations of principled AI and various other things like that?
This is a great question. As a clinician myself, I believe that there are areas in practice that is irreplaceable. No matter how advanced AI is, the compassion, the empathy, the connection with the patient, you will need clinicians. There's the human touch that is very difficult to replicate. However, I believe AI can definitely augment clinicians and basically make clinicians' life easier by helping them really focus on the patient and automating everything else that should be automated. Currently, the solution is not a medical device, but I can definitely foresee a future where we can use a data-driven approach, understand what are the information and educational gaps of clinicians, and be able to then derive additional products that provide more active clinical decision support.
I have one follow-up. It's about business model, revenue model, more specifically, right? I often find that SaaS as a model is kind of a lazy catch-all for everything. I was just wondering whether there is a barrier, right? You need whether it's an individual GP practice or a group, a trust, or whatever it is, to sort of buy in across the level through the governance structure they have. Could you not make it much more sort of free for all and based on decision making? And actually better decision, a decision they make, so each transaction that they make, you take a piece of every transaction, but you charge per unit more, rather than getting to people sort of buy in.
Yeah, great question again. In 3 minutes, it's difficult to cover everything, but yes, so there's a baseline subscription, but on top of it, so they get 25K searches per month, but anything on top, so if their organization, they have a lot of clinicians, they search us more, it will be based on the number of searches, there'll be additional charges.
The reason I've asked, I've invested in a few in this space, target NHS, target these, and they really struggle to scale because they convince a few people and they just, that it's a barrier to adoption. So it's just something to think about.
Good, and it sounds like a further conversation could be emerging here. Get your ticket to Costa Rica there, Keith. Jamie, Ting, or John, who wants to ask the next question? Who wants to jump? Jamie, please.
I'll ask if no one. I love the idea because again, personal experience, My wife had a problem. She got a new GP, not the old one retired, and said, well, actually, there's work in this area that might solve your problem. After 2 years of sort of going through the process at Ambrooks, she ended up at Papworth. The people at Papworth just knew absolutely what was going on. They knew all of what needed to happen. And pretty quickly, after 3 hard operations, she was fixed. And it made it very clear to me that the sort of information that's held in GP surgeries is at best outdated. At worst, they are probably way too busy even to do some of these searches. And indeed, in today's Times, there was an article by a GP, albeit quite an old GP, who was saying just how much she misses what it used to be a GP. So, Darrin's point about can you do away with GPs, I'm paraphrasing him a little bit. I can see there being quite a big barrier. So I would foresee that in A&E or whatever, where you need results and you need them quickly, there's going to be some positivity towards it. I wonder whether you're going to be dealing with a lot of doctors. Obviously, the current people who are doctors aren't, but doctors can be extremely conservative and just stop following new ways of working or believing in new ways of curing problems. So how do you think, how are you going to deal with that? What is your go-to-market strategy in terms of segmenting the market?
That's a great question. Well, a lot of things I want to address, probably need another meeting on this. First of all, you'd be delighted that Royal Papworth Hospital is actually on our pipeline. So we're looking to potentially help them disseminate their guidances to the other colleagues across the region in an ICS footprint. So they're amazing. Regarding GPs, I think, and how to get that adoption, I think every technology, when developed, there is a technology adoption curve. So you would not be able to just suddenly have everyone loving your product, but as long as you have that narrow initial early adopters, we've shown with all the different partnerships with our clinical champions, we can start to gain the trust and start to build that trust and build that word of mouth, and then spread through the clinician colleagues. So additionally, we also work with organizations. So there is a top-down drive as well to say, hey, these are our local guidances, these are local documents, please use the MedWise platform to gain access to this. So I think that also helps address that point.
Okay, so
is it up and running? Sorry, is it up and running?
Oh, yes.
And give me an idea of how many searches are done. I don't want any confidential information or to give your secrets away, but how is that? You presumably are watching that build.
Yeah, so there are multiple deployments. So we have one that is for primary care, but right now we're very focused on our resources actually on the organizational ones, because we have multiple pilots going and we're developing those organizational features, but those are not launched yet. So it's still in the pre-launch phase. We're working with them. So we could have a separate call and I can share more.
All right, good.
10 seconds.
Yeah.
Think about tying in with, I made investment in a company called Push Doctor, these companies that are doing logistics enhancement, GP appointments online. They're really
we actually have run a pilot with Push Doctor already.
But they're really struggling. But these companies are really struggling because people want that interpersonal interaction face to face, and they struggle with that barrier. However, if you can give them better clinical decision making around there, that will overcome, in my view, that barrier, because you still physically see the doctor, but they don't have anything else to offer other than they're making it more convenient for you, right? So you need to be convenience plus, and you may have less barrier with those than general GPs.
Good. Well, you've got everyone fired up, Keith. You're getting advice as well as questions. I'm going to come now to Ting, please. We just relatively quick, if you can.
Yes, yes, very quick. I like your slogan, Google for doctors, but I would like also to say Google is Google because it's free. Everyone can use it for free. So maybe you could, I didn't get a lot of information when you talk about upselling, whether you can sell to pharmaceutical companies, drug, drug discovery company, etc. But I would just thinking, perhaps if you can work out the model, consider what Darrin said, it's difficult to scale up selling to NHS doctors, whether you could find somehow selling to the other upselling and give it for free for the, NHS to use.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, probably another conversation, but in our financial model, you can see that's what we're planning for the US market. In the UK, we do have a free version as well, but the pharmaceutical market side is a bit, quite a bit smaller. But we plan to be using a free model in the US. Any
other market? Oh, I just forgot to say also, check out Greve Shot. The company used to be called Greve Shot. It's sold to, I think, Cisco a couple years ago. But I had the pleasure to work with them years ago when John Snyder just set up the company, and they basically, work on search technology for ads, and they had enormous success in enterprise sales. And John Snyder gave a talk recently in Cambridge Andrew Support for a company about the, how to do enterprise sales. You need a great sales team if you can get that into the next plan. Okay.
That's a great model. That was a big 10xer for lots of us who invested.
I thought I saw an enigmatic smile there, Darrin.
I should have invested too.
Just very quickly, John, did you have maybe time just for a quick comment, if not a question?
Well, I think I'm just building on some of the ideas people have shared. I mean, very clear presentation. You can see how excited all of us have got. I just had a friend that was working at QRX, which is doing kind of communications and surgeries.
Love them.
And I think one of the things that I found really compelling was how they basically mix consumer models with business sales. So kind of get people using it. It solved a problem, which was it saved GPs time, and they got it for free if they recommended it to their friends. So everyone did, and gradually it went from 5%, 10%, 60%. They got through the country using kind of classic consumer strategy, which was kind of network effects, virality, etc. So I think that's the same here. It felt to me that you pitch it, it's like, does a GP want to save time? Yes. So actually that decision maker is going to say, yes, this is helpful for me. That just building what kind of some of what Darrin was saying, can you get that going from the bottom up? And can you just get that demand coming from the ground? Because ultimately, if you can, and you can kind of win the ground war, then you can make the money later.
Good. Thank you, John. Keith, you've sparked a lot of conversations there, and lots of things that this would normally carry on in the bar afterwards. It's not going to carry on in the bar this evening, but good luck with your venture. We'll come back to you maybe with a few questions from our audience later. But thank you ever so much, Keith.
Thanks a lot, everyone.
Cheers. And for those who are just asking, if you do want to ask any questions, type any questions out, do please put them in the Q&A. We'll try and get to them at the end. And it'd be very helpful for me if you can just identify which venture you're asking a question about, because so I'm looking at some of the questions you've got. It just says, how else can you use your technology? I'm not quite sure who you're referring to. So we probably can work it out, but it would be great if you can specify who you're asking the question to. And our final pitch this evening is going to be from Rio. So Rio, are you with us? You are there.
Yes.
Fantastic. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Have you where are you in terms of your cycle? Have you had any investment yet?
So much earlier than any of the speakers we've had today. So I'm a postdoc in the engineering department, and we're still piggybacking off academic grants. So apologies, some of the answers to questions later might be a bit lackluster, maybe substandard.
No, don't start by apologizing. Start by taking on. Absolutely, don't start on the back foot. You start on the front foot. You say what we're actually doing is we are absolutely milking it with academic grants, and then you go from there.
We are indeed.
All right. Okay, Rio, the stage is yours.
Fantastic. Awesome, thank you. So hi, I'm Rio, and I'm a co-founder at Alma. First, let's address the elephant in the room. Why is there a man talking to you today about vaginal health? Well, in fact, it's not just me. Today, I'm speaking on behalf of Alma, an interdisciplinary team of designers, anthropologists, and scientists. At Alma, our mission is to create a cultural change in female intimate care by combining technology with education. So how did we get here? First, let me introduce you to Julia, an interaction designer and co-founder of Alma. Julia has been working on tackling social taboos surrounding female intimate care for many years. When she started Alma back in 2018, she was developing her own test kits for vaginal infections by growing her own vaginal bacteria. This is because society's culture of shame and silence around female intimate health has led to very few medical tools being developed to support people. So after speaking to her and also with many other people around the world through user research, we realized that there is so much opportunity for new technologies to address many of these gaps, and so we decided to work together. Vaginal fluids are experienced by females every day, but are particularly taboo in today's society. Research has shown that it holds numerous biomarkers for various conditions, such as vaginal infections. However, at-home tests are few and far between, and those that exist, such as pH swabs, offer very limited information. More advanced solutions based on G sequencing do exist, but these require intensive lab-based analysis and are less suitable for regular at-home use. Our solution is a wearable biosensor that quantifies biomarkers in vaginal fluids, focusing in particular on those relevant for vaginal infections. The sensor will be integrated into a pad that can be worn for several hours per day. By docking to an external unit, information will be read out and displayed to the user through an app. By using electronic biosensors, we can provide real-time, non-invasive, at-home measurements of vaginal health for the first time. We are currently exploring a B2C business model with our technology as a lifestyle and/or medical tool. We will initially focus on the 7 million people aged 18 to 29 in the UK, since they are 50% more likely to develop vaginal conditions and have a higher technology adoption rate. We are currently progressing the technology at the Department of Engineering towards our first MVP. We are actively looking for social investors who can share in our mission and our vision, as well as expertise in the healthcare system and product development. Thank you for listening, and we welcome your questions.
Unmute here. Thank you very much, Rio. And you were starting to touch, I think, a little bit on some of the ideas that I was talking about at the beginning around values and value, but there's going to be some questions, I am sure. Who would like to ask the first question?
Maybe I'll go for it, because I'm
absolutely
probably the only female, I guess, in the panel. Well, according to the definition, okay, of female women, okay. So I'm definitely right, the definition. So I really like the idea, Rio, and congratulations, because as a woman and coming from Chinese background, I can totally relate to the awkward experience of many women, struggling to go to hospital if they suspect, they have some kind of problem, intimate health. So I think that is definitely a great value proposition, and particularly if you think about underdeveloping countries. I think in the UK, people can go to GP, it's all free and get all that. But in other countries where they have to pay, I think there's an even much bigger market for you. Also the cultural wise, it's more discreet approach. So think about that. Maybe UK market may not be your first go-to market. If you have support, particularly if you can get an investor who can bring you into another market, perhaps that's something for you to look at. That's one thing. A second, of course, technically, I haven't seen your information on how accurate it is. I think that's the most important, considering now we have, ready to test pregnancy tests, and now COVID. I mean, people can accept the concept of home testing if you really can prove the accuracy, and also what's next. Maybe considering once you tested what solution you can provide, perhaps there will be some upselling, cross-selling point. So that's
okay. Good. There's some good feedback there. Let's have a question if we can. Darrin, you have a question?
Yeah, I was tempted to stay quiet in this one because 30 years ago, I came here and I studied biosensors and bioelectronics and spent the probably 10 years of my life looking at these things that sound beautiful in concept and really struggled to find applications. They always sounded so eloquent. You could present how they would be used remotely, point of care, etc. But they always struggled to deliver, and that's changed over time. But it's still sort of something that says. So when I saw your application, it just raised just so many alarm bells. Really, I'd like to understand you need to understand what markers what's the benefit of putting it on, wearing it for a period of time. Are you trying to measure biomarkers that are indicative of conditions that are to do with wearing clothes a long time, some to do with odor problems, for example? Are there some biomarkers that only secrete when they're in a particular, you need so much more information to be able to get this. Otherwise, it just looked to me like 1,000 of those pictures that I've seen that look all very exciting and promising. And when you dig in, it's really going to come down to the key to the biomarker, its correlation to the particular indication, and then the value of that to the user and the barrier to entry, whether it's invasion, wearing a pair of panty liners or whatever it is for that period of time. So it got me excited. And if I was a non-specialist investor, I'd be more excited than I am as a specialist investor.
Okay, all right. Good, that's some good feedback. Let's see if we can challenge Rio with a question. Who can challenge Rio with a question as we would if we were seeing this pitch? John, you want to come in with a question?
I guess I'm the other end of the spectrum, so not the expertise of Darrin, but I guess for me hearing it, I felt firstly very clear, very concise and well presented. So even though you're at that early stage, that was really well done. I guess for me, it's probably one of those next steps. Like where do you go from here? How long does it take you to start testing this out, get the evidence to bring it to market? Is it 6 months, a year? Like what does that look like?
This is a great question. So we are looking at a couple of years, and this is not the standard technology development life cycle that technologies usually take. And the reason is because of social taboos, fundamental research on intimate health, for example, just handling vaginal fluids as a sensing medium, it has not been done before. So what we are proposing has multiple steps of novel development that needs to be cleared first. And so we are looking at, we're being honest, this is why we're still in the academic field and we haven't gone straight to investors, is that there's still a fair amount of fundamental tech development and validation that needs to happen. So I'm thinking a couple of years. Yeah.
Do you find that a satisfactory answer, John?
Well, I think it feels to me, as Darrin's saying, that the key thing here is that does it work? And ultimately, you're at a very, very early stage of research and you need to build out that evidence base. I mean, I was speaking to a gentleman last week, a founder of a very successful company. They were trying to do, I think, glucose monitoring, and in test environments all the way up to whatever it is, I'm not in this area, stage 2 trials, it was working really good. But unfortunately, when you got it out of controlled settings and it was in the real world scenarios, it just didn't work in the same way because of temperature changes, etc. So I don't know enough, but I think like that it just has to have that evidence, because ultimately it's only as good as what it can be used for. And it sounds like you're still exploring that.
Yes. Yeah, no, exactly. And so what we're doing is we're currently going for some academic grants for the next 12 months, and we're in collaboration with reproductive health experts in London from King's College, where even just working with real vaginal fluids, we've been working in vitro with simulated fluids to try and get a better understanding, but obviously we have to start using the real stuff. And that's difficult. There are no protocols around this. People don't study this stuff. So we're trying to break multiple steps of barriers here.
Good. I'm going to come to Jamie in a second, but I just want to come back to Darrin because I know this is of interest in you. Darrin, if you'd listened to this pitch and bearing in mind what you've heard, what advice would you give to Rio now? And would you stay in contact with them and give them some direction?
Yeah, I mean, you're very practical. These follow-up questions were bang on the money, right? So I would focus on selling the concept. It's easy to sell that concept, right? You've got a bioanalytical system that can be discreetly placed in a location. You've got all of that in your pitch around there. I would focus in on what is the key biomarker without giving the science away. So you probably be proprietary, the biomarker or whatever around there. So what is the key indication, the killer application that's going? And I would focus on the one that has a clearly defined market opportunity. It wasn't necessarily the most big speculative one that's going to get billions of wearers. Every woman in the world is going to be wearing. Something that is specific, where it doesn't have a lot of competition in terms of the clinical diagnostic market, etc. So be quite specific in laying that out. And then when you go into your technical proof, you're just honest about where you are right now. Lay out the steps that you need to do. Okay, you've got the sensor, you're immobilizing the detection, molecular recognition element, etc. And then this is what's been done, and this is where we are. We're in a laboratory at the moment, and now we need to go into different milieu, and that's where the complexity comes. So I would sort of like lay out something, a concrete process to get to the first, we would call it minimum viable product, but it's quite complex in your side, but that's what I would lay out myself. Because otherwise you've got to get these, anyone who's in the audience who's done a lot of bioanalytical, biosensor type thing is going to go, oh, not another one.
Okay, well, that's fair comment. Jamie, now I'm going to be very rude now and say you've talked about your wife 3 times so far. I don't know if you can talk about your wife this time. I have no idea if you are, Jamie, but it's over to you.
No, I'm not.
Fair enough.
I mean, I could do, but I'm
not.
No,
absolutely. I was only joking, but thank you. Please,
no,
Jamie,
no.
I was with you.
Darrin has kind of said it in a much more technical way than I would, because I don't have a background in this field. But absolutely, it's what's your killer app. And have you considered going slightly sideways? You know, UTIs, for instance, are a prevalent problem. You can see, I suppose, sexual health, you know, just getting to the point of breaking the market down into what you think are the areas, being able to then think about what size of market, how attractive do you think it might be, and using that to start picking areas you might want to choose and move forward on. And I absolutely agree with Darrin. Sometimes, much as we VCs like, oh, tell me the market is absolutely huge, sometimes you need to pick a market that starts you on the road and gets you into that position. So have you considered other aspects of female health?
Yeah, no, it's a very good point. Before we got on to the actual tech development, we did months and sort of reiterating, trying to understand what marker is actually useful to monitor. And this is a sad reality where the number of known markers versus the number of conditions, let's say, is very limited. So we chose vaginal infections as a starting point just because there was more literature available and clinical evidence for biomarkers in vaginal fluids. There are plenty of other conditions such as endometriosis or PCOS or other conditions that will be also equally worth trying to detect. But unfortunately, the medicine has not caught up and there is nothing for us to detect yet that's proven. So we're a bit limited.
Have you done surveys of females and asked them what they've, their perspective on what they'd like you to be able to tell them?
It was a bit, this is again, very good point. We did, so we've done many things. We've done workshops across the world. We've done about 11 of them in different cultural contexts. When it comes to what Ting mentioned earlier about, could there be other markets abroad that could be useful? We've had some insights on that as well. We've also done some surveys online. They're a bit angled because we already came in with the slant of vaginal infections, but there was over 80% yes rate to having some form of a wearable that could help them. What we know is that the main issue is that there is nothing. There are no real good tools. So yeah, there is a definite appetite for this.
And well done, because the presentation did give some reality to it, probably more reality than you feel at this moment in time, but you did have pictures of what it might look like, so that's good.
All right, can I give one last piece of advice? Just one last piece of advice, right? Be careful you don't, when you could argue, if you're being very skeptical, you could say this is a technology looking for an application, right? You just described that in your own words yourself, right? You picked vaginal because you can see that was where the biomarker, that's not, so where you get across your passion when you do a pitch, there are those who come at it from the end application. They're doing it because they want to transform the life of women through better vaginal health or whatever the application is. And I've seen companies run by men who've done that like as well around, but they're passionate about the end application. And if you're kind of like passionate about the science and technology, I would focus on that, getting people excited about that, rather than trying to convince them this is our application. But then when we peel the onion there, you come across more technologists than that. So I would sort of just think about that, so you don't fall between two stones, right? Because your pitch, your deck, your slides suggest it's the application that you're passionate about, but your talking suggests the technology.
Yeah,
I would say it's a bit. I'd like to be a bit of both.
Yeah, be careful. Be careful. I think that's I think where we started, where I sort of started thinking about this. You know, is it value? What the values are, and that's very important here. But also, what is the value you're going to create, and that's going to be very, very important. Can I invite all of the ventures back into the room? If you're not in the room, let's have all of you, so we can say a big thank you and just finish up in the last 6 or 7 minutes with a little bit of shared feedback. And I've got a couple of questions from the audience. So if we have the other 3 guys could join us, that would be great. I don't know if you're there. If not, you're going to have to answer all the questions, Rio. So you're going to have to answer the questions about all of the others. So I hope you're paying attention. So while we're waiting for the others to join us, I'm just going to ask. Here we are, guys. Fantastic. All right, now first of all, well done, everybody. It's great. You're out there. That is the most important thing. You've got yourselves in front of investors. You've got the story started, and that's really, really important. Each of us are going to go away. The audience. The investors, the advisors are going to go away with some sense of what you guys are doing. And if we wake up tomorrow morning and we're still thinking about it, you've done a great thing, because there may well be the start of a relationship, and that's really, really important. So well done and congratulations for bringing your ideas to life. I'd like to ask, before I just come to some specific questions, I'd like to ask each of the panelists, it's very difficult, but a little bit of comparison, a little bit of a feeling about the flavour of tonight's pitches, what you liked. We've got your feedback. Just see if there's some sort of connections you can build. Let's start with Ting. Ting, just give your feedback, and we'll just ask you just to give a little bit of feedback about your feeling about tonight's pitches.
Well, first I would like to congratulate every entrepreneur. You've done a great job to talk about your company, and I can see the passion you have, whether it's for application, for your technology, and I hope that we have collectively also give you some useful feedback. I certainly I remember every one of you, your company and your name, and I would be very happy to have a private chat if you are interested in doing business in China, or just talk about fundraising from some of the Cambridge Angels, and happy to make introductions.
Ting, what I think is brilliant tonight is you've done your own pitching tonight, Ting. I love it. I love it. I think it's perfect. We've learned a lot from you about how to pitch. John, would you like to just give a little bit of feedback about your feeling about some of the things you've witnessed tonight?
Well, I think what we said earlier was it was about kind of, does it inspire the interest? You want to kind of explore more, and you can see, I think, with all the conversations that there was a depth there. We wanted to go further. We wanted to find out more. So I thought that was great, and I think everyone, from my perspective, kind of communicated very clearly as we talked at the beginning. I think one thing I would say is I felt like every single, obviously, organization has its, and founders have their own personality and own style of communication. But actually, in the most recent one we saw Alma at the end, even though it was very early stage, you're still able to get across a very slick, very clear presentation. So I think actually the ability to kind of pitch and communicate needs to fit with the stage of business, but actually whether you're early stage or more developed, I think you can still kind of communicate in that kind of very clear way. So I just felt it was just great to see range of businesses at different stages. But I think overall, those conversations kind of got a lot further. I think we'd carry on having a discussion, as you said, in the virtual bar afterwards.
Absolutely. All right. Jamie.
Yeah, so I say this in a positive way. The presentations, you dealt with the time constraints much better than I thought was going to happen. The clarity was there. One thing that I would say, though, is that they're very technical. And I've been there, I've done exactly the same. You kind of live in the technical, and you've got to start thinking in the sort of the commercial side. Think like your customers, think about what they need, and then how you get there. But yeah, well done.
Good. Darrin, what's your thoughts overall?
Yeah. I'd just like to reiterate John's point. I used to be a hyperventilating sort of pile of sweat when I first used to speak publicly in front of anyone. And it was always one of my problems, that it's an area that needed to improve. And it's so good now, so you're all at different stages, some in the lab, some have already been out clearly raising funds, speaking to customers, and your presentation. And the 3-minute format is actually quite a challenging one. I kind of like the 1 minute or the longer pitch. I think selecting what's in and what's out in 3 minutes is actually more of a challenge actually than that. So I thought that was really good. And you were all at different stages, so please don't take anything that I said as too much critique. A couple of the businesses, clearly Cain and Medwise, commercially a little bit more thought through and well through. I think HX, you've got a big tech play, and you've got to sort of process, and you understand that, and getting away to quite an abstract concept, so crystallizing out that sort of key application is good. And Ria, I didn't mean to be too harsh, perhaps I should have just shut up in that sense, but the technologies, I love biosensor technologies, and we are starting to see them come out there and actually solve applications, but it is a challenge once you go into real world samples. So I think you did a good job as well.
Good. Reminds me about your fears there, Darrin. It reminds me of that well-known fact that public speaking is a human #1 fear. Death is #2 fear, which means more people would rather be in the coffin than giving the eulogy.
Indeed.
There you go. So just to the questions that we've had around are all very interesting. They've been around how you deal with data, how you deal with IP. Some of the questions have been answered. It's just really adding more information to what you guys have been talking about and just expanding on. But I'd like to ask each of you just in 30 seconds just to reiterate what's unique about your idea.
Start with who?
Start with Rio. I'm going to go backwards.
So what is unique about us? So we are trying to develop the first wearable biosensor for monitoring vaginal health at home in a non-invasive way.
Good. Thank you ever so much for your pitch this evening, and good luck, Rio. Let's go back now to Keith.
We're the first real-time search platform supporting clinicians and also collecting data to help improve healthcare.
Good, and you did a great job. Thank you very much, Keith. And Elena.
Sure.
Oh, sorry. Sure. Yeah, sorry, Elena. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're the first people making neurotechnology for commercial markets that's actually easy to use and doesn't require any level of expertise to get into.
Good. And you didn't even move your lips there, Elena. It was brilliant. And finally, Andrea.
So we really provide connectivity for any type of device, if it's a point of care device or a medical bedside device, anything we can connect, but more importantly, we standardize those connections. So we are forcing them to all adopt the same format. So these data are really usable because they can be integrated with each other.
Good. Fantastic. Well, guys, as I say, there's a few questions that you've already been able to answer. I typing through. It's absolutely, I'm not going to ask all these questions now, but very much quite, as I say, about data, about IP, about price points. Thank you ever so much to all of you for pitching. If you want to, just very quickly, you can see the questions that are being asked you. If you want to type an answer, gather some information, please do that, Ventures. Thank you all very much. Darrin, Jamie, John, Ting, thank you so much for your brilliant questions, advice and feedback. It's been a great pleasure to listen to you, and thank you all ever so much for your contribution.